Welcome to the Mentorship Challenge. I'm Marc Wainer, and I'm absolutely delighted with the response that we have had from mentors and mentees as a result of this show. The mentors and mentees have started connecting, and the feedback has been amazing. With me today is Precious Zainzinger Tuitz.
Hello.
Precious, welcome. Thank you for joining us. For the benefit of viewers, I have to tell them that you were one of the people who volunteered your time on our website.
That is correct.
The reason you're here today is because what we found was you have proved to be one of the most popular people on the website. Over 50 people have applied to be mentored by you. So when we saw the response from people, from someone who hadn't appeared on the show,
yes,
we said, well, let's have you and find out exactly what it is that has this appeal. You were born in South Africa.
Yes.
Left South Africa when you were 13, going on 14.
That is correct.
To go to Austria.
Yes, that's correct.
Your father was Austrian. Your mother South African.
Yes.
And they got tired of you. They kicked you out of the house at the tender age of 14
yes,
to further your education in Austria. So you arrive at age just under 14.
That is correct.
In a strange country where you don't speak the language.
Yes.
Small family support.
Yes.
Must have been a very difficult time for you.
Yes, it was very difficult. I did have a major culture shock. I did want to return as soon as possible. But my parents urged me to stay in order to finish my schooling, which I eventually did. At the end of the day, I am very, very grateful. I had to overcome many obstacles during that time, but it all depends on how you see the obstacles. And I think those experiences in my very, very young age have actually formed me of who I am today.
Obstacles sometimes become opportunities, but you don't realize it at the time.
Yes.
And then somewhere along the way, somebody says to you, I think you should be a teacher.
That is correct.
Tell us about that.
So at first I was very reluctant because that was not something that I had ever pursued in my career.
For the benefit of our viewers, what you're doing is teaching English as a second language.
That is correct.
But in a totally different way.
Yes.
So maybe just tell us about that.
So it's all about doing while you are teaching. It's a structured program, it's a thought-through program, and during the years you progress, or the student progresses while learning English.
I'm a 3-year-old kid,
yes,
coming to learn language. What would my experience be?
Yes, so we sing songs related to what the child is learning. In that way, the child will remember the vocabulary more easier because the child is singing the song and actually doing the actions to the song. We also play a lot of games, so the children do not have the feeling that they're actually learning what we are teaching them. They think that the whole lesson is just about playing games. We speak to them. We also conduct different activities. A typical example would be if we're teaching children fruit and vegetables, we will actually play shopping. I will be the cashier. I will ask the children what they would like to buy. They would put the fruit into their little baskets. They would come to me and they would have to name the fruit or the vegetable that they're actually buying. So in that way, they're speaking English to me. They are engaged in an activity without actually knowing that they are learning the vocabulary.
You also teach adults.
Yes. So we also cater to teenagers. We cater to students. We also offer exam preparation courses for students to get into universities or also for immigration reasons.
If you could have dinner,
yes,
with any person in the world, who would it be?
It would have been Nelson Mandela. Our family have gone through a lot of hardships in South Africa. So my mother is Xhosa, my father is Austria, meaning he's also white. Due to the Immorality Act, we were deported from South Africa twice. I was also born in Soweto, so it's a very similar story to Trevor Manuel. My father basically lost everything. He lost everything in Johannesburg. He was a very renowned jeweler at that time. And he also lost almost everything in Windhoek when we were staying there at that time. So why do I want to meet Nelson Mandela? I think he was also indirect a mentor of how to deal with certain situations without taking or paying revenge. And I think this is incredibly important, to stand above all things and not to be on that level of the other person's side. And he also taught how to forgive. And I think this is incredibly important.
He had this absolute passion and love for children.
Yes.
Which was just amazing. So that's fascinating. You, as I said earlier, chose to register as a mentor on our website.
That is correct.
Why?
When I started my business, I would have loved to have people to help me out, to speak to me, to talk to me, and to show me and lead me into the right direction. And I did not always get that opportunity. And I want to give people the opportunity to thrive. I want to share my knowledge. I want to share all of the hardships that I went through. I want to give them hope. I want to give them strength. When I built this business, I went through many, many obstacles. At the beginning, clients also always criticized my product, and I did feel upset about it. But instead of whining and saying, oh, nobody wants my product, I actually embraced that fact, because the clients were communicating to me what is not right with my product. And in that way, they gave me the opportunity to make it right.
If you were saying to people out there who would love to start a business,
yes,
teaching, whatever it is, what advice would you give them?
Being an entrepreneur is one of the most difficult things that I've ever done in my life. You do not have a boss who tells you what to do. You will be making your own decisions. You have to be resilient, and you have to want this so bad. And you will also have to build thick skin, because things will be said to you, things will be done to you. If you do not have that, then you will break.
And you have to believe in yourself and what you're doing, and just
yes,
pick
definitely.
yourself up and carry on.
That is correct.
We get to the part of the program now where I normally say to my guests,
yes,
how many hours of your valuable time
yes,
are you going to give us? But I can't do that to you, because you've already shot the lights out.
Oh.
And pledged an incredible 20 hours a month.
That is correct.
Of your time. That's
yes,
240 hours of your time.
Yes.
Which is absolutely an incredible pledge, for which
thank you.
I'm speechless, and for which I thank you. If you have somebody, a friend, a colleague in your field or another field,
yes,
that we can go to and say, Precious has challenged you to be a mentor.
It would be my managing director in Austria.
Name?
His name is Dr. Georg Tichy. And he has also started a huge program for entrepreneurship. Precious,
I think what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
Helping kids, adults, business people communicate, because communication is what it's all about at the end of the day, being able to communicate. If you would like to be mentored by Precious, please register on the website. It could change your life. See you after the break. With me today is someone who needs no introduction whatsoever. Welcome, Trevor Manuel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark.
So, a very interesting career. Everybody knows you were South Africa's longest serving Minister of Finance. I think it was 13 years. But I'd like to go back, if you don't mind. Let's start off where you started, growing up in Kensington.
I went to school when I wasn't quite 5, and during my first year, half of our class was emptied.
Because of removals?
Because of removals. So the issue of race was very strong growing up. And then a few years later, the one side of my family, my paternal side, were all networked through District 6, and from 67 everybody was removed from there. And my maternal family lived in town in Stellenbosch, and the same thing happened. So the political issues were actually quite strong, and they were communicated in that kind of way. My father had a big heart attack when I was 13, died. And for the rest of my school years, my mother raised me. I realized that life is pretty tough. You've got to make your own way. I knew that because I had reasonably good passes in maths and science, I could do something that was quantitative. When I left school, I worked in a clothing factory for a little while. And
Your mother worked in?
My mother worked in the same factory.
I think she worked for Rex Trueform.
She'd been at Rex Trueform for many years, and now this factory, Goldnet, was much closer to home. So I went there and worked there.
So when she was with Rex Trueform, they were famous for their suit, Man About Town. I'm sure she didn't realize that her son would become the man about town.
No, none of this stuff was evident then. And there was a little ad in the newspaper for civil engineering technicians, and I at Murray and Stewart, and I then applied. And they were a bit confused because I think that they meant the ad for white applicants, but they didn't specify it. And I went along and I was interviewed, got a job, and the guy said, no, but you must start life as a clerk. I said, fine. And for the first year there, I was a costing clerk, and I battled. Every time I'd ask the seaman, you know, you're young, you are insecure, you can't just walk into some senior manager's office and you know, moan about issues. But I kept going back, and eventually he said to me, you know, I'm getting tired of you. The following year, I started out as a civil engineering technician trainee, starting out in land surveying. And within a few years, I was asked to complete a contract as a site agent. So that was a big up for me, because it was a vote of confidence in me. My comrades came to me and said, look, you're concerned about a career, you're concerned about your pension now. We need to liberate this country, so leave that. So
you started that with things like the rent, the rent boycott.
It was the Cape Areas Housing Action Committee, and I needed to build that organization out of the ground. You try and build an organization with people during the week when everybody's at work. It was unbelievably difficult because it tested my self-discipline, I think, to the maximum. What do you do? What gets you up in the morning? How do you get to people? How do you approach them? How do you plan for events? How do you build organizations out of the ground? And so it afforded me an opportunity to go from community to community, convene people, convene frequently housewives during the day, ensuring that families came along.
So did you give up your job, or was this full-time?
I gave up my job.
So you were doing this full-time?
I did it full-time, and there wasn't an income. I wasn't employed. So by 82, some of us got together, including people like Pravin Gordon, a number of us, sat down quietly, looked at it, and then thought that we'd be well advised to initiate the idea of a united front. And so from January 1983, we actually got Alan Busak to make the call. And then we built a platform, and then in August 83, we launched this United Democratic Front.
UDF.
The UDF, which grew in leaps and bounds.
And you then became in charge of, or deputy of, the Western Cape area.
I became the secretary for the Western Cape, which I shared with Cyril Carolus, actually.
So then we move on, and the ANC gets unbanned, and you get the job now of setting up some kind of organization and publicity. Work continued, as you say, publicity and building the ANC's presence back in the country. February the 2nd, this is 1990. Right.
We knew, we had a sense of what would happen. We'd mobilized people. We were in the city of Cape Town, outside of Parliament, when F.W. de Klerk was addressing Parliament. The following morning, early past 7, I got a call from a man called General Willemse, who was then head of prisons. And he asked me to be at his office at 2:30. The general told us that Nelson Mandela would be released the following day, and that he was our responsibility from the moment he walked out from the prison. The following year was an ANC conference. I was elected onto the National Executive Committee and then onto the National Working Committee, and NWC was then kind of deemed to be a cabinet. You had responsibility for departments in the ANC. And where would I go? I have no distinct skills. And Cyril was the Secretary General, called me and said, okay, it's economic planning. And I said, but I don't know anything about economic planning. And he said to me, I'm not negotiating with you. That's not my mandate. If you have a problem, call the president. So I looked at this and thought it's a great opportunity, and then sort of intensively started reading as much as I could
about economics,
diverse sources, and then essentially I was embraced and learned then how to work.
So learned on the job.
Learned to work with people who I respected because I knew that they knew more than I did.
We have this announcement. Trevor Manuel's now been appointed as Minister of Finance. Shock and horror, I remember, in the business community. You're replacing a banker, no experience in economics, and the markets are going to be jittery, and your famous remark, what are these amorphous things called the market, or something to that effect. And yet, notwithstanding that, you become arguably certainly the longest serving and the most successful Minister of Finance that this country's had in memory. After your 13 years, you no longer the Minister of Finance, but you've left the country, the finances of the country in great shape, and you go into the office of the presidency. Looking back on what's happened from the time you left this balance sheet and the state of the country to where it was the end of last year, how do you feel about it?
The big challenge that confronts us is that material wants knows no bounds. And capitalism, for all of the joy that it's brought, incalculable wealth to people, it remains unloved because it's never taught people that part of the joys of wealth is actually knowing when is enough. And people don't do it, and so they do it by whatever means necessary. And I think that what you're likely to see over the next period is the destruction of reputations of people who are charged, who thought they could get away with a lot of stuff for very long. And many of them have, because it's 20 years that some people have been doing very bad things. But you've got to make a clean breast of it. And so you've got to effect a rupture, because, whilst the focus would be on what happened in Saxonwold and what those tenders were about and so on, the truth of the matter is that it runs all the way through to the traffic officer who wants cool drink money. Once you set the country on a wrong path, then everybody who can climb in will climb in, and you've got to insist that there are consequences for the wrongdoing.
Just talking and finishing off on finances, we've just recently had the budget, and we've seen VAT increased by 1% to make up for a big hole in the finances, which largely seems to have occurred because of corruption and state capture and unauthorized expenditure. So, whilst I understand the need to fill the hole, it seems somehow unfair that we're asking the poorest of the poor to make good the sins of the people in charge without there even being any contrition or not taking us some things. There should have been some signal, I think, from the politicians to say, hey, we're also part and parcel of this. We were asleep when it was happening. We didn't do what we should have done. So we're making some kind of sacrifice. Do you think there was anything else that could have been done besides a VAT increase?
Look, it's a difficult issue. I mean, it's quite remarkable that we could retain VAT at the former rate of 14% for as long as we did. And in the discussions, that has always been an easy target because your yield per percentage of increase is actually phenomenally high. Many people would say a wealth increase, but it's clear that SARS has lost the part of its ability to keep proper data of top earners. The truth of the matter is that you're correct in saying that poor people who have less ability to move their money are paying the price for very poor administration and malgovernance, certainly over the last decade or so.
And I think the opposition party's big thing was an anti-Zuma campaign, and now it's gone.
Opposition parties, stand-up comedians, all had the same script, right? And now it's gone. Now you actually have to do some hard work. Now it's becoming very difficult. I think the key issue for me is how we can energize our democracy differently.
In your travels and in all the meetings you had with the IMF, the World Bank, meeting world leaders, who would you say is the person that you met that most impressed you, world leader?
Working in the shadow of Nelson Mandela, having him available, not just to talk to, but or as a president, also as a mentor, right? I mean, I couldn't talk about life without reflecting on that. Madiba knew that when he appointed us, we were young, we were inexperienced. And part of what he
said, you will learn.
You will learn. Part of his own engagement with us was actually about constructing guardrails around us. He'd kind of put his arm around you as a father would to a son and walk and say, are you sure about this thing that you're doing? I mean, shouldn't you reconsider? And that was fundamentally important. There's a kind of mentorship element in there that we frequently don't give sufficient attention to. You know, earlier I wasn't even in government yet. I visited Kuala Lumpur, and I met Prime Minister Mahathir, and he actually gave me about 45 minutes. I was completely bowled over. Here was a seasoned prime minister. He'd been in office for maybe like 28 years by then, giving me time, talking to me about South Africa, talking to me. And then he'd say to me things like, what would you say the biggest problem in South Africa is? It's unemployment, he says, but none of what you've told me thus far begins to deal with unemployment. If you identify the problem that keeps you up at night, then your solutions must be premised on solving that problem. That kind of discussion.
So, Trevor, it's been a fascinating discussion. We didn't bring you here only for your good looks.
I was wondering.
So, there's a lesson there. Maybe we don't need economists to tell us how to run our business. Maybe we need people who are more practical. How many of your valuable hours can you give us to mentor some people out there who would like to come into service?
I could probably deal with 4 people initially. I couldn't tell you right up front.
Number of hours.
The number of hours, but if these 4 people work out and they go off and the contact becomes less frequent, then you can repopulate that 4 with new
so,
people.
I'm a negotiator by nature, so can we make it 5? 1 more. Over 12 months.
I suppose you could make it 5.
Okay, so
but I couldn't take any more than that.
Okay, so Trevor, thank you very, very much for that pledge. 5 people, I'm sure we're going to be inundated. Next question for you. Do you have anybody else, whether in the political field or any other field, who you could challenge and you think would make a good mentor?
I think that my wife Maria has come through an interesting path in life, a child of an immigrant family, learning through, battling to the position, has done big jobs in her life, I think that she also has a lot to offer younger people.
Maria would be a fantastic mentor, and we're going to contact her. If you get into trouble as a result, too bad. I would like to be mentored by her, but I'm not allowed to apply. So thank you for your appearance. Thank you for your pledge. As a token of appreciation, I'd like to give you a copy of my book, Making My Mark.
Thank you very much, Mark.
If you would like to be mentored by Trevor, please register on the website. It could and will change your life.